Hey, what's up guys, it's Oakley, and this is going to be a pretty cool battle. It's almost going to play out like a siege of a fortified location. I am Bretonnia on our rightmost flank, moving forward with 2 trebuchets, 4 peasant longbowmen, 3 or 4 spearmen, and I believe 2 halberds. So just a bit of a holding infantry force to screen the peasants. And then we do have some elite forces in the back, some Grill Knights, with a Chaos Giant, because my ally, one of them is a Beastman. And on the right flank we have more knights moving up. So pretty good kind of heraldic force pushing forward. And over there in the distance I have my Pegasus Knights dipping and dodging through the forest. And they have Louan-l'Encœur. They're over on the left, or their left flank. And they're basically moving forward to try and get around the side of the enemy and screen kind of what's in the woods. We also have a couple more Ungor herds deployed in vanguard positions to sweep around the flank. So we're moving up here. And what are we facing off against? Well, there's an army combined here of 2 dwarves and 1 vampire count. So the vampire count has hex wraiths, various troops deploy all around, but the main problem that we have is, well, the enemy was given this defensive position on Helfen, and this is where the dwarven artillery is going to start to position itself. You have some bolt throwers, some grudge throwers, you have some engineers, and lots of cannons, flame cannons also starting to get positioned, and the rest of the dwarven force now is pulling back. A huge battery of guns and whatnot deployed down here on the low ground as well, so they are definitely gonna wait for us to bring the fight to them. Slayers mixed in with cannons, mixed in with their king, is a really cool sight. And over up through the front, the organ gun has started to take some fire from our guys. My artillery decided to push up, and we actually have a Cygor getting some support in. So now the enemy's trying to re-scramble while our shots are incoming. And I'm going to put this on slow motion real quick. So the enemy is nice and buttoned up here, and they're going to start to pull more units to this kind of downhill position. While the artillery continues to batter us. Up on this front we have 1 Cygor on our far left, the enemy's right, throwing massive stones on this front just to try and soften up the enemy's defense here. Targeting the Longbeards is a good move. And then we have 3 allies, so myself, the Beastmen, and then the Greenskins. The problem for us is we have this huge Greenskin force. Actually, he has more numbers than both me and my ally, and he has almost 2,000 men. So a huge force, 5 of these orc boys, and then he has just tons and tons of the cheap Night Goblin archers. And rather than giving an attack order, for some reason he has orders to go all the way on the right. So he's just completely pulling out of the frontal assault. Not quite sure why. So that's going to give us pause. But anyways, I'm coming back around to the right. So my knights that were chilling out in the back are now going to start to pull and sort of cover our assault through the position here. More knights moving forward. I do have reserves deciding to pull themselves out of position. Some more peasant bowmen. And here comes our force with the Cygor in the distance. It's a cool shot. Let's capture this. And then you can see in the distance the position we're trying to take out. So here we are, going forward, screening, Knights of the Realm, Shock Cav, all of that moving up. Peasant Bowmen also starting to move into position. And now we have some enemy movement as well, a Gyrocopter coming in. So now I'm going to redeploy some of my Peasant Bowmen. The reason for bringing this many Peasant Bowmen is I figured that the Vampire Counts would try and pull out a lot of flying units, and so I was getting ready to shoot them out of the air. It looks like I'm going to get the opportunity to take on that force. Yep. My Bowman here going to be shooting at it, and we're going to see it off. It has a lot of health. That's a Gyro Bomber, but it's going to be taken out of position. As it starts to kind of move around, well, we're preparing our assault on this front. Looks like the Vampire Counts are going to try and be the first line to try and take us out. They've staked out a position up on the top left with the Hex Wraiths, closing in this entire flank to meet us. And we'll see how that goes. However, we were able to sneak with our troops around the flank. Looks like they didn't see them. We're still hidden, so now we have 2 bow units and raiders ready. And then I have some of my own guys on this front. And then we give an attack orders with Louan-l'Encœur to try and take out this gun position that is focusing fire on our Cygor. A nice exchange taking place there. But I figured we needed to come in and come out and just take this position out before it was too late. So here we come, swarming out of the trees. There are enemy flying units in close support, but I'm going to have to make this quick. In and out, knock out these forces. And then before the enemy can try and react with pulling the Slayers and other forces, I'm going to be pulling out of here. And there you go. So now we're out of this position before any additional damage could be taken. Put this on pause, pivot back to the left. So like I was saying, the enemy has formed up in mass in the woods. Pretty scary force. Zombies getting into position, and then we have a lot of the Crypt Horrors going to be pouring out of the forest at our lines. Now we were a pretty scary force as well. I've got my halberds in position. We got a lot of Bestigors and Minotaurs and other forces in close support. And then my archers are pulling in on the flank to try and give a supporting position, but now they're going to try and wrap around us, so we'll see how this goes as the enemy charges in. It looks like our move is going to be to try and move back, because the enemy is in close support of the Dwarven artillery. They have a flying unit coming in, so that is a good move for us to kind of pull back and button up our flank. And meanwhile, they're going to leave the Bretonnian spearmen to try and see off the enemy's charge. And there is a undead dragon on the right flank, just slowly bearing its position. And now it looks like we're going to get a charge on both sides. And this is with the arrival of my knights, so just to the surprise of the enemy, they get charged up through the front, break this position, and now they're fearful of the incoming attack of the knights. Artillery coming to bombard them, and then we're going to crash through the entire line. My flaming my flaming spears and lances, and then now even my spearmen are going to join the fray. So we've done a really nice countercharge into this force. On this side, however, the Hex Wraiths are going to close in on our giant that's in a position to hold back this entire force. And actually he has a Minotaur there to help him out. But into this mix, the other Minotaur force is actually going to start to take tremendous damage from this ethereal unit. That's pretty scary. And so now he's going to try and bring in Malagor, the Dark Omen, and other forces. So on this flank, I've been able to crush Skeleton Warriors and others. But man, it is not looking good for us. Put this on pause real quick so we can take a look at the rest of the battlefield. On this front, we've been kind of diving in and out with some of my elite units. Flying troops to try and continue to knock out the cannons and whatnot, but it's not really getting us anywhere. You know, the dwarfs are continuing to station up here, position their troops, and just get lots of fire in at our men while the engagement is underway. A lot of my artillery focusing fire on the flank of the units, and we're going to start to do real damage on their elite troops. In the back, the Orc army is still trying to pull into position, but just isn't doing much at this time being. My knights have pulled back from their charge, and now they're going to try and reposition to take out the Hex Wraiths. And especially with the Grail Knights, who are able to take out ethereal units, is going to be a real buff to us. The enemy Gyro Bomber does notice that this is a key moment for him, so he comes and swoops in, drops the remainder of his bombs, and now is almost through with it. But my Grail Knights were really critical here. Look how quickly they killed those Hex Wraiths, and so now we have a victory. We're going to be able to come back and close in on the central position where the enemy is really crumbling super hard. My artillery barrage was redirected here, and now we're going to see off most of the enemy forces. You can see a full-on retreat of the vampiric force pulling back through the woods, chased by Minotaurs and combined men-at-arms, so really cool to see. Of course, this was kind of precipitated by my knights here to break the initial assault on the right and come back and rally on our left, so that was a really cool 1-2 punch that we were able to pull off. And this giant also helping to hold back the flank. I mean, if one thing's going to take out these Crypt Horrors, it's going to be an even scarier horror. And now the rest of our force is going to start to pull up. Surviving Minotaurs and my huge peasant bowman units, who this whole time actually were providing a lot of nice supporting fire. And they're the ones who really started to focus fire on the huge enemy forces like the Lord. Manfred von Karstein was really close to dying. If we had killed him, then the entire zombie force would have collapsed, which is kind of what they're doing in his absence. but at least he was able to pull himself out with a couple key units. They're reforming behind the gun line of the dwarves. As I've been saying, in the background we've been attacking a couple troops, Léon le Haut here, trying to take out some slayers, and they're actually going to prove far harder to kill than would have been expected. Pegasus Knights took out a gun unit, and now the slayers are starting to do a lot of damage to my lord. Thankfully we don't have too much close support. The organ guns meanwhile have been firing away at my guys this entire time, but they've just been targeting peasants, so not that big of a threat. And my own artillery comes crashing in, hitting some of the tight clusters of dwarven warriors on the back of the hill. So we know that the dwarven warriors are going to be the crux of the defense as they hold this hill position. Flame cannons also turning about to try and hold back our forces, who are soon going to be charging through the woods. This is really cool to see. So the vampires had retreated through these woods. Now the dwarves have repositioned themselves. Thorgrim again coming in, and now they're going to try and hold this area. But what they're seeing is a huge flanking force around the left as we completely ignore this strong position. A couple of our peasants are going to start to move up. I'm going to target the gyro bomber, which has meanwhile been shooting away at some of our elite units, but most of our cavalry most of our cavalry is pulling up through here, and now we've seized the high ground with the enemy on the down low. So this is a nice position to be. We re-enter the cover of the forest, so now the enemy is going to lose track of us, which is great. So cannons can't target us, so now we're just going to wait for the charge. Giant gets a nice flank, and then here we're going to start to focus fire on this position. Yes, this whole gun line is shooting at us, but we're doing pretty well. Two gore bulls and a minotaur is going to be enough to flatten these longbeards, I should say. Yeah, they're going to make mincemeat of them, breaking them up. Thorgrim does get in the mix, and now you're going to see some of the Bretonnian spearmen start to charge him. So a lot of damage being done. Our guys are kind of just holding on the flank, and I've decided to focus fire with my all my longbowmen on this exposed unit, and I'm going to try and re-target Thorgrim. Meanwhile, in the back lines, the entire enemy force has been kind of caught staring at the front position, and are only now going to be aware that we're charging in the back with our hidden units. That's going to be, oh my god, knights combined with Ungor herdsmen. So they're going to charge clear through. That's happening here. Léon le Haut took a lot of damage fighting the slayers, but was able to extradite himself and kill that force. Meanwhile, all of our units are now going to kind of complete a surround on the enemy main line, plus the Chaos Giant. So this is a roving band of merry men, killing anything in the back, and so now our encirclement is pretty much complete with this victory. So what are we going to do with that? Well, now we're going to descend, oh my god, on the main cluster of dwarves, holding the rear and the artillery. Now we wash through it. Thorgrim in the distance being charged at by a gore bull. Even some of our knights going to get close, and I'm continuing to target him with my peasants. You saw a couple arrows fly through the air, so the focus fire with them was critical. Flame cannons are going to be turned around to try and turn on our men. We'll see how that goes, but it is desperate straits. A couple of their gunners and correlers are moved in, but now we charge through with this massive herd, and we have some of the sickest charge units here in the game. Thorgrim does come back. We'll see how that goes. So a mass attack into the back with my cavalry. The dwarven forces are now going to try and collapse back on us. We'll see how that goes. The main front line is engaged. My peasants are trying to do something, but have started to pull back. Now that I have Léon le Haut that was in the mix, he's starting to take a lot of damage, but I needed him here to break this position. And I do have a couple Pegasus Knights trying to escort him, and he was able to break that. So now we can focus fire on the rest of this force. The dwarven gun line in the back has turned about, and this is going to be pretty scary for us. These guns are still alive because they can target some of our elite guys. So not only is it going to be the giant, but you can see they're actually targeting Léon le Haut, who's here flying around again with his escort of Pegasus Knights. and he is really low on health, so we'll see how the gun crew deal with this. The knights are getting ever closer to the Dwarven battle lines, but meanwhile, the entire vampire force sallied out and did destroy my backlines, took out my trebuchets, and is taking out the remainder of my forces with Manfred von Karsien. I have a bunch of bows here, trying to give him grief. You can see those arrows coming in, doing a lot of damage. He's super low health, but the Vargeists do finally get in the mix. So I'm going to sacrifice a couple of these peasant bowmen while the rest of my bowmen try and pull out. Vampires are casting spells, doing everything they can to drive my men back. I do have a little bit of a charge with my cavalry into the Graveguard. We're at critical binding, but they're going to end up destroying my guys. Meanwhile, the cannons that I was talking about did see off Louon Leoncoeur, who is here at about just a couple hit points, and he does rally, but the cannons are still continuing to charge him, or target him, I should say. So I'll see how that goes. I do realize this soon, and I'm going to pull him out of the cannon fire and try and flank around the left. Let's go back to this position. A couple cannons still firing at my lord, and my knights do get forced back. Yeah, here comes my lord. So the charge was fairly successful with all our knights into the rear. But now our forces are starting to crumble. We're being seen off. Malagor is here trying to deal with Thorgrim plus a Gorbel. We'll see how that goes. But the main trouble is, you guys noticed, it's been a 2 versus 3 the whole time. So my Grail Knights do pull back, and all of our forces are kind of in disarray. The enemy is coming back with Vampire Counts on the flank now to get the rear of our forces, so they're going to rally. So it looks like it's the end of our assault with 2 of our armies, but you may be wondering, where is that Greenskin army? Well, it did that big flanking position, and now, for some reason, our ally has nestled himself up here in the woods with 2,000 men doing almost nothing this whole time. So the bounce bar is vastly in our favor. I mean, the enemy is down to 500 men, and we have over 2,000, and that is solely due to this army's non-committal. But they are completely hidden, so our enemies must be super surprised about what's going on. Meanwhile, skeletons are continuing to chase away our guys. I have a couple of my Bretonnian spear arms that are starting to rally. Most of them are shattered. Most of them are being seen off by some of the grave guards, but even these guys are in the process of dying in the pursuit because they're so far away from their lord, and they're losing critical binding, so that pursuit is not wholly effective. And then some of my knights in the back start to come back, some of my archers as well, some of my Pegasus knights, so we're starting to rally a bit of a motley crew. And then Louon, that I've brought back, has replenished his HP ever since he's come back from the fight. And what I'm going to be doing is, I had a couple key Knights of the Realm here, and they're going to try and help target the enemy gun crew. Grail Knights do manage to take out the enemy cannon, so now I'm kind of have free reign with Louon Leoncoeur to try and survive, and I'm going to try and knock out another gun crew. But the problem is, now we have some Vargeists trying to come after me. They do target the Grail Knights, thankfully, instead of my lord. And yeah, they're going to swat down these knights pretty easily. I bring down Louis, thinking I would be able to save my knights, but they shatter, and now the enemy's going to turn on me and pretty much take him out. I did pop all my abilities, but the vampire dragon is going to come in, and this is going to prove the end of me. I do have a couple archers starting to fire into the mix, but that enemy charge really just takes me out, and then he's off. So that was a close call. Like I said, I did have some supporting archer fire pelting these units. We'll see how I end up doing. I am shuffling around some spearmen, but they did end up retreating in the face of that. And I will see their final volley. Oh, that does not go too well. And this guy's even got a arrow sticking out of his hands and his mandibles. So had I had a couple, oh my god, had I had a couple more of those bowmen, it probably could have destroyed the enemy lord. So we'll see how that goes. But they are still at critical binding at this point. Meanwhile, the dwarf forces have rallied and are being a little bit cautious. They're trying to rally around the last of their siege engines. Most of these dwarf warriors are super low health, almost nothing left to keep them in the mix. And now here comes this entire orc army streaming down the hills. My ally, the Beastmen, have Ungor Raiders and then Malagor. Meanwhile, I don't really have anything left to play with. I think I have one knight unit. Yeah, Knights of the Realm still alive. The rest is beaten back. So now finally, let's see, as the walk gets underway with tons of men. and see what they're able to do. Oh, and I guess he does actually have some Black Orcs in the back. I didn't realize, and even more on the downhill position streaming in. Gonna be interesting to see how this goes down. Let's go back and watch this and look at the Dwarven guys. Even their heroes are super low health. Thorgrim is tired, he's diminished. Very diminutive gun line. These guys are barely holding on to the edges of their morale. And that's it. This is 2 Dwarven armies. The Vampire Count force is still roaming around. I mean, he has Crypt Horrors who are drained. Their damage, they have good binding, so they're not losing any more troops. So as long as they stay close to their lord, they should be okay. But that is the extent of their force. They've called off the pursuit of our troops in the distance, or have pretty much died off. And now he's summoning kind of the rest of his forces to his side. Let's watch from the destroyed Dwarven perspective, kind of what this looks like. And they're slowly closing ranks. Flame cannons here are going to try and reload, refuel, and get ready to beat this off, but I'm not quite sure they are aware of just how many men are coming down at them. And it's a huge force, and the funny thing about this is it's all archers, pretty much. We have a couple of our Ungor herds still alive to support, and Malagor, it looks like, still holding down this flank. So once again, myself and my Beastman ally going to be doing most of the work here. The Greenskins, again, redeploying in kind of a weird fashion. Instead of charging headlong at the dwarves, they decide to charge straight into the woods and target Manfred von Karstein. But at this point, somehow he's going to start crumbling, and he's just going to die. So he dies. All of a sudden the rest of his force dies, and then with that the rest of the Dwarven army collapses and flees. So literally our ally did not fire a single shot, and it was merely his presence at the end that brought about the end of the battle. The entire fighting of this 2 versus 3 was done by myself and my ally, so that was actually pretty fun in terms of a scenario. Played out really good. I'm glad it came out as a victory. Of course, I probably would have been a little bit more bitter had we lost, but I think it was fun in the end. Let's end the replay, take a look at some of the final stats, see who got most of the kills on our side. I'm really curious if the Greenskins got any kills. Let's hop over to them first. Greenskins here, a total of 4, 8, 9 kills total for the force that had 2,000 men. And yeah, almost in excess of what was deployed here. That's really funny. Yeah, he's got basically the equivalent of this army number. So let's see myself. Most of the kills with Pegasus Knights and Cavalry, who did most of the running down of the rear lines. Louon Leoncoeur doing really well. Spears not super good, and Artillery, of course, doing handy amounts of work. My ally here, most of it the Bestigor herds, and definitely the Gorbals. They always get you a lot of kills. I think I got the most kills. Shadow here really close, but I mean he deployed half my number, so good on him. The Dwarven defense crew didn't do very much. I mean, that's pretty apparent. They mostly sat back. Here the Slayers with 1 kill were focused on taking down my lord, and they got slaughtered. Cannons did fairly well. The organ guns up front targeting my cheap peasants. And then finally the Vampire Counts here tried to do most of the fighting with the Vargeist and Manfred, but their main assault on our double line did not end well because they weren't in close support with the dwarves. Had they come down with, you know, the full force of their triple army versus just the 2 of us, probably would have won, but they were committed to kind of sitting back and peppering us with the artillery, which kind of worked well until we descended en force on that flank. So hope you guys enjoyed. Stay tuned for more. See you in the next one, and yeah, peace out.